so much cargo, but we New Guineans have so little.
Ever since Yali asked his question to Jared Diamond, he has made it his lifelong quest to answer that question. People had been hunter-gatherers for thousands of generations, finding and eating what they could. But then, 11,000 years ago, something amazing happened. People began to domesticate crops and live in farming societies. They all began in the Middle East, where they had moderate climate, wheat and barley, and goats. But then there was a drop in temperature and a decrease in rainfall. This forced the farmers to migrate to an area of better climate and more water, Eurasia. In Eurasia, they had 12 of the 14 only animals to ever be domesticated.
Whoa.
Because of food being plentiful and healthy, populations throughout Europe began to skyrocket. Since the entire population wasn't needed to grow food, they could pursue other occupations. This allowed specialized workers to develop things like steel, swords, and guns, and skills like horseback riding and shooting.
Bang! So, the diet here in New Guinea, which consists mostly of roots and berries and takes days to harvest, didn't allow the population to grow, which would have led to technology and expansion. The Europeans, on the other hand, were able to develop guns, germs, and steel solely from wheat, barley, and domesticated animals. This allowed them to advance much faster than other peoples and dominate them.
It wasn't long before the Europeans left their home in search of gold and new lands to conquer. The Incan emperor, Atapualta, was believed by his people to be a descendant of the sun itself and a god. Many Incans also thought the Europeans were gods because of their many differences. Atapualta wanted to bring Pizarro and his men into a trap so he could prove to his people that he was indeed a more powerful god.
Other gods have entered the empire. Perhaps they are more powerful than you are.
I must prove that I am greater.
The Europeans, who were in fact afraid of Atapualta's army, planned an attack on the Incans, who greatly outnumbered them. The Incans, terrified when facing guns, trained horses, and a surprise attack, were slaughtered.
Ándale muchachos, disparan sus armas. Bang, 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 bang. I surrender. You can have as much gold as you want.
In time, nearly the entire empire would crumble under the might of an enemy which could not be seen or stopped. Smallpox. Europeans also ventured into Africa. Europeans eventually made their way to Cape Town. Since Cape Town and southern Africa were at a similar distance away from the equator as Europe, the crops they had grown in Europe they could grow in South Africa. Since Europeans had always been in close contact with domesticated animals, they had grown immunity to the diseases carried by these animals. However, when they came to Africa and brought their diseases with them, the native Africans did not have any immunity and died off quickly.
Hey, get off our land, we are here first.
A group of Dutch farmers, with guns, ventured out into the rest of the continent to find new places to farm. These people were called the Voortrekkers. They eventually crossed the border of the Zulu Empire. Small bands of Zulus ambushed caravans of Voortrekkers at night and brutally massacred them.
Zulu, 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 Zulu.
The Voortrekkers were extremely angered by the actions of the Zulus. They banded together and put their wagons into a circle. When the Zulus attacked, the Voortrekkers' guns won them the day. The Zulus lost 10,000 men, while the Voortrekkers had 3 injuries. It was a battle that eventually became known as Blood River.
Zulu, 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 bang, bang, oh, Zulu, Zulu, bang, bang,
The Voortrekkers had been very successful, but they did something that ended their success story. they crossed the Tropic of Cancer. Once there, the familiar climate that had allowed them to grow their crops in Europe and southern Africa changed. Here, there were only 2 seasons, rainy and dry.
Oops.
The Vortrekkers had always made their farms by sources of water, but that was an area dominated by a blood-sucking, disease-spreading foe, malaria-infested mosquitoes. Europeans hadn't come across malaria before and had no immunity to it. Now, the Vortrekkers had little food and no immunity to the local diseases, so they didn't last long.
Ow, 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 damn mosquitoes. Oh, malaria.
11,000 years ago, while Europe was feasting on domesticated wheat and barley that could be stored for years and feed enormous civilizations, the rest of the world was still gathering wild food to feed its tiny villages. Europe's larger population allowed specialized workers to develop steel, swords, and guns, which in turn led to the conquest of underdeveloped peoples. So, we can relate European advantages over other people back to guns, germs, and steel.